Hello and welcome to the Inside Intelligence webinar series, brought to you by the Master of Science in Intelligence Analysis program and the Johns Hopkins University Office of Advanced Academic Programs. Today's event features a discussion on learning how to maximize your chances to obtain a security clearance with Mark Zaid. My name is Natalie Cross, and I'm the event producer. Please note today's event will be recorded and uploaded to the AAP YouTube channel under the Intelligence Analysis playlist. During the program, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function, and we will answer as many questions as possible during the latter portion of the event. With that, I will turn over the presentation to our moderator, Elisa Lacey.
Thank you all for joining us today. Like Natalie said, my name is Elisa, and I am the president of the Johns Hopkins chapter of the Order of the Sword and Shield National Honor Society. We're excited to welcome you to today's event, which is co-sponsored by our program and the MS Intelligence Analysis program. Before we begin today's presentation, I'd like to take a moment to introduce OSS to all of you. It's an academic and professional honor society dedicated to the securities field, such as homeland security, intelligence, and cybersecurity. Our mission is to promote excellence in scholarship, critical thinking, and professional development while upholding the highest ethical standards within the protected securities professions. Through education and action, we strive to contribute to a safer and more secure world. If you would like to get involved in our organization, please reach out to myself or Dr. Michael Ard. It is now my privilege to introduce our speaker today, Mark Zaid. Mr. Zaid is a renowned national security attorney who specializes in advising federal employees, including those in the intelligence, military, and law enforcement communities, as well as defense contractors. He has extensive experience guiding clients through the complex processes of obtaining and maintaining security clearances, a topic that is particularly relevant for students who are interested in federal careers or internships. Today, Mr. Zaid will be sharing his expertise on how to successfully navigate the security clearance process, including filling out the SF-86 National Security Questionnaire, what to expect during polygraph exams, and practical advice on how to maximize your chances of qualifying for security clearance. In addition to his law practice, Mr. Zaid is the founder and executive director of the James Madison Project and co-founder of Whistleblower Aid, where he has worked tirelessly to protect the rights of those who expose wrongdoing in the national security sector. We are truly fortunate to have him with us today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mark Zaid.
Great. Thank you, Elisa. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Yep, as we're putting into the chat, don't hesitate as I go through the presentation over the course of the next hour to post your questions along the way, because we're going to go through the SF-86, which stands for Standard Form 86. It's just the 86th document in a long litany of documents that the Office of Personnel Management created over the years. This is the National Security Questionnaire that everyone has to fill out, no matter what level of clearance you might be obtaining, of which there are three: confidential, which we never see any longer, secret, and top secret. You might also have heard the notion of TSSCI, sensitive compartmented information. That's actually not a clearance level. It is a clearance access sort of portal. Same thing with a special access program, or SAP. So these are off of the secret or top secret level, though usually we hear about it for top secret. The online eQuip is the same as the SF-86. It's just an online version. There is actually a newer version that some of the agencies are using online that is much shorter. I forget what the name of it is. We haven't seen it consistently yet. But generally speaking, you will be filling out this SF-86. It's got 29 sections. It's over 130 pages. We're going to walk you through it, the key sections that would normally potentially trip someone up, or where there might be what's called disqualifying information or potentially disqualifying information, because there are a lot of things that could be potentially disqualifying, such as you were arrested for DUI, for drunk driving. But it could also be something favorable. you're originally from another country, you're a naturalized US citizen, or maybe your spouse is a foreign national. Those are potentially disqualifying, but clearances are all about mitigation. What can you do to overcome the concerns the US government might have in order to mitigate those to show that you are trustworthy and have good judgment in order to obtain a clearance? There are three things that go along with the clearance. You have to, one, fill out all the paperwork and sign your secrecy non-disclosure agreement. You have to be determined after a background investigation to be trustworthy. And then you have to have what's called a need to know that classified access. That's essentially a relevancy determination. But the key things are, first, you got to get in the door. You have to be sponsored. So a lot of times I hear the question, well, okay, I want to work in the national security arena, which could also be law enforcement, obviously, or diplomacy. Can I get my clearance now so I'm ready to go when I graduate? I wish, but unfortunately not. You need to be sponsored, whether that is by a federal government agency or a contractor who puts you in for the access. What you can do, though, to be prepared is fill out the SF-86 so you're ready to go. You can just Google it. It will come up. Usually it's the first thing on the list at the opm.gov website. It is an interactive form with drop-down menus, and it does have the capacity for you to save it onto your computer and modify it as you go along. Sometimes you may have literally only days to fill out this form if you're hired, especially by a defense contractor who wants you to go right away. So the earlier you fill this form out and just be ready to then update it when the time comes, the better it will be for you. Some of the information you're going to need to compile is just going to take you some time to figure out, especially if you're a little bit older. Where did you live X number of years ago? What's the address of the university you might have gone to or the dorm you lived in? Who can you use as a verifier to show that you lived in an apartment 12 years ago or whatever it might be? Or what were the circumstances of this arrest that you once had when you were in college, maybe 15 years ago? So you're going to want to compile all of this. Now, what I will do and bring up, hang on as I share my screen and bring the document up. All right, let's see. We want to bring this up bigger. All right, everybody see that? Hopefully somebody can give me a thumbs up that you see it or into the chat with it. Right? Can somebody just tell me, can you see this? All right, somebody's perfect. Okay, excellent. All right, so all forms for the US government always has some instructions. The instructions for the SF-86 are actually quite useful. Let me first also just say, so I've been handling security clearance cases now for over 25 years. I first started having access to classified information in the mid-90s. As a lawyer, my access is a little bit different than if you were working for the federal government, which is why actually I can say I had access in the mid-90s, but I didn't have a clearance until about 25 years ago. And for those who follow the news, I might not have a clearance any longer because apparently the President of the United States revoked my clearance. Nobody's told me about that yet, other than what's in the newspaper or on Twitter, but supposedly that's the case. Doesn't stop me from being able to share my expertise with you on how to best get a clearance. So I will routinely represent individuals who are either federal contractors or government employees at the highest levels of government to help them either fill this form out or to defend an action to suspend their access, to revoke or deny their access. There is a whole hierarchy of due process that is supposed to exist and normally does for when someone faces loss of their clearance. I'm not going to go over that now. Certainly, if anyone ever is facing that, you can reach out to me at a later date. What I want to do now is walk you through how best to try and get your security clearance so that you can maximize those chances. All right, so definitely recommend reading through this form. It gives you the background of what is required for a clearance. It talks about what the authorities are. Now, here where it says penalties for false statement, very key. Excuse me, lying on this form, excuse me, or omitting information that you know should be there is a felony. Now, are people prosecuted for lying on this form? Rarely. It happens. So this is something really serious. And the last thing you ever want is to have a lack of candor allegation against you, because that goes key to obviously your trustworthiness determination that the government is going to be rendering. And this could be as simple as you forgot to put something on, or you changed an answer later on. I mean, I used to I used to be shocked, although nothing anymore shocks me after doing this for 30 plus years, when I had clients who forgot they had been arrested in the past. And then as I got older, I realized how you could forget something like that. But literally, arrests oftentimes, and what would more likely be applicable to most of you, given how old you probably are as grad students, prior drug use. Exactly what amount of drug use might you have put down, lawful or unlawful, and which we'll go through as we get to that particular section. So this also talks about routine uses. Where does this form go? This is a federal form. When you fill it out for one agency, they can share it with other federal agencies. It will not go outside of the federal government, at least until perhaps a foreign government steals it, as the Chinese have been accused of doing. But it's not supposed to go outside the federal government. But whenever you do this form, make sure, even though it is 130 plus pages, print it out in a hard copy to make sure you have that copy. Save it in multiple locations. Put it on a thumb drive, a CD, whatever, to make sure you have it, because that document will follow you for the rest of your life, literally. This will be retained for decades. And if you do enter into a career in the national security sector, you are going to have to make sure that your completion of each of these forms, whether it's this one or a new one that might come about later, is consistent. And the government will check, because it will have these old forms. It will go back to see and compare your answers. It talks about 150 minutes being your normal response for this. This document will take you way longer, most likely, than 150 minutes. So be prepared. That's why I tell you to do it now, so you have it ready. So you can see, even on this version, which is not a live version, I have this on just my computer, are all these drop-down menus are still active, so you can still do it. The first few sections are very routine, as you can see. Name, place of birth, date of birth, social, nicknames that you've used. I never used Marcus. Some people call me that every once in a while, but I don't use it, so I don't put it down. But for example, my dad's name is Ronald, but he goes by Ron. So Ronald would be his birth name. Ron would be the nickname that he would put down by this if he was filling that out. And you'll see oftentimes where you can say present, you can do estimated to come up with the dates if you don't know the exact dates. Contact info, and at some point it's going to need to be updated. As you can see, November 2016 is the last time that this form was updated, other than the newer online version that I'm not even sure is available for folks to see, other than when assigned to or sent by the government. But it will ask you for your email addresses. You will not, to my knowledge, and I will say that everything going on in this chaotic administration is not necessarily what we're normally accustomed to. So I can't tell you what's going to happen in the next few months or 2-3 years. So I'll have to go on what has been the customary procedures for the last few decades. The government does not ask you for your social media accounts. I'm actually quite surprised, and I think that this will be forthcoming at some point in the near future. So now some of the intelligence agencies might understand this is your basic document. There might be supplemental forms that you fill out that the FBI asks you to fill out, that the CIA or NSA asks you to fill out. But this is the generic form for everybody inside the federal government. You might also come across a document called the SF-85P, as in public trust. A public trust is not a security clearance. We call it a security clearance light. It's just a trustworthiness determination. The form is about 20 pages. It is very similar. It doesn't go into the details, obviously, that the SF-86 does, but it is a suitability determination. That's often used at agencies like the Department of Homeland Security for non-security related positions or non-cleared positions, so that if you don't have a clearance, you might have to fill out this SF-85P instead. So even though you're not required to give up your social media account information, keep in mind that whether it's for the government or a private entity, you should be very careful about what you have online. Whatever's online comes back to haunt you. I mean, I have tweets that I, put out there years ago that are still brought up, against me in a professional capacity. But, if you guys have social accounts, I mean, thankfully, when I was back in college in the 80s, we only had photographs, nothing online. I was in a fraternity. I know what it's like to have fun. Thankfully, no one else will see what I did back in those days. You guys, you live online. So at least if you're posting it online, make sure your privacy settings are up to the maximum so only your friends can see it. But also keep in mind your friends could obviously download those photos as well. So you always want to be careful about it. Passport information, citizenship. All right. I don't know who obviously is in our audience, but I imagine usually, especially in my Hopkins classes, there are folks who are naturalized U.S. citizens. You have to be a U.S. citizen to have a security clearance. There could be exceptions, but as a general rule, no, you do have to be a citizen. It is perfectly fine to be a dual or multinational citizen. It is not against the law in the United States. It is potentially disqualifying if you utilize the citizenship. Just having the citizenship is not an issue. But if you vote in a foreign country's election, an issue. If you have property, an issue. If you travel there, potential issue. Whether you're a U.S. citizen or not, or naturalized, doesn't make a difference. But you will, if you are naturalized, have to fill out additional information about where your naturalization was and your forms and things like that, obviously. For many jobs, obviously, it is a bonus if you are from some other country and have that knowledge, especially from a cultural standpoint. One of the reasons why this form is so long is because it keeps going over and over into doing some of the kind of repetitions if you have more than one citizenship or more than one job or more than one residence. So a lot of times we're just going to be able to skip down lower, but you can see the type of information that is requested for this. And some of this, I no doubt you will need to look up and maybe check your old paperwork. The one thing I will tell you for those who were born elsewhere and took on U.S. citizenship, few things I guess I'll tell you. One, depending on what country you're from, taking on the U.S. citizenship may have nullified or extinguished your other original citizenship, such as for India. If you take on another citizenship, you lose your Indian citizenship, though you still have additional rights to travel documents that non-native Indians will have. Some countries, you can't give up your citizenship at all. And there is no reason why you should renounce your foreign citizenship. If someone in the government or your contractor is telling you to do that, talk to an experienced lawyer about it first, because I will tell you they are wrong. I see this all the time, but there is no reason to renounce your foreign citizenship. I used to do that a lot with people 15 years ago, but the government took the position, changed the policy, because by telling another country you were renouncing their citizenship, you effectively told them you were getting a U.S. security clearance, because there's no other reason to renounce your citizenship. But the key is, if you lost that original citizenship, you're not a dual national anymore, and you wouldn't have to say it. Although I would still suggest that you say it in a way that explains what happened. And I'm trying, sorry, to pull up the questions because it is not coming up for me for some reason. That is weird. So I'm having a problem in pulling up. I see there's one in the Q&A, but the system is not letting me pick it up for some reason. So do this, guys. Put the questions in the chat, because the chat I can see. I'm not sure what's going on with the Q&A for some reason, some Zoom issue. All right. For those who are thinking about taking dual citizenships, right? That can create disqualification. It's happening a lot more now, obviously. And for some countries, it's very easy to get dual citizenship. Again, it is the utilization of it. But if you get it as an adult, that is demonstrating potential loyalty to the other country. I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but it's something to talk about and consider first. Now, you will see in the form words that are in bold, like the yes here, words that are capitalized and bolded. As you, as master students at JHU, I know you realize that that means those are more important words. So pay very careful attention. I will tell you as well, this is a very poorly worded form. There are a lot of gaps in it. If any of you are lawyers by training, or you talk to lawyers about filling out the form, do not lawyerize the form. Do not interpret the form as if it's a contract where you can push a square peg into a round hole, because you'll only get yourself into trouble if someone on the other side, as part of the background investigation, calls you on it and you are seen to have an omission in the form. So if you have the dual citizenship, boom, you just fill out the form. Again, here, have you taken any action to renounce? No. But what you always want to say is, I am willing to renounce if requested by the U.S. government. Now, I have never seen that happen. It could happen, but you're not bound by it if you change your mind after. For those who don't have their SF-86, you should submit a Privacy Act request to the agency that would have it, whether it's OPM or the DCSA, the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. That's generally the agency most of you will deal with. Obviously, it could be with another agency as well, but you definitely want to ask for a copy and send that request in as soon as possible, because that takes forever to do. All right, let me look at James's question. Passport. Okay, you're asking about passports. That's going to come up. So 10.2, good timing. Have you ever been issued a passport for a country other than the US? So this would be, even if your passport is now expired, you would still list the old passport. I always save my US passports. One, because it's cool to look at the visas if you have any visa stamps or anything, in entry stamps or exit stamps. But also, oftentimes the government will ask you for them to make copies. And it's the best way, obviously, to try and remember what dates you were in and out of the country. So I would recommend it. And again, you're just asking where you went with it. If you have another country's passport that is active, you are allowed to use it. Some countries require the use of their passport for their citizens to enter and exit their countries. The US government knows that. So you can do that, but entering or exiting the US government, only use your US passport. So, yeah, I know it's tempting. You come in and maybe the US line is really long, but the EU line isn't. You need to use the US line if you have a US passport. All right, we skip down. All right, section 11, where you lived. Okay, in bold, 10 years it's going back. Now, for some of you, you don't have to go back before your 18th birthday unless you need 2 years residence. You don't have to list temporary locations of less than 90 days. This is an issue perhaps for some, especially as COVID time period is incorporated within this 10-year period, because maybe you went and you lived with your family, your friends, you vacationed for a period of time. So you just have to figure that out. I usually will tell folks if this incorporates your college time and you were in different dorms, you should still list each of those entries separately, even if it's just a different dorm room in the same dorm. And again, you can do estimates. You will list here someone who knew you at this address. The government will do a background investigation. They're doing it less and less because the reality is it doesn't really reveal much, because quite frankly, many of us don't know our neighbors anymore the way we used to. So it's not as useful for the government, but they will still check with someone to verify. So keep in mind, don't give the name of the landlord who you stiffed on the last month's rent, right? Choose someone who can verify you, who you're in the good graces of. And as you'll see later, you're only supposed to use the same name in one place. Some of the verifiers you can have for the same verifications, let's say you had the same roommate time and time again, that you can do, or if it was a rental company or maybe a different same landlord, different buildings. But you'll see in other places where they only want you to use the reference once, and I'll highlight that as we go along. If you don't know people's contact info, you will see throughout the form a box for I don't know. And see, this is just a lot of residential, so you can just keep skipping if you don't have anywhere to do. Where you went to school. You'd be amazed how many people lie about the fact that they graduated. So make sure if you say you graduated, you graduated. The US government will check to make sure that you achieved your degree. And same thing, you'll just go back, who to list for a verifier, whether it's a roommate, a former professor, whatever it might be, what your degree was. This is all pretty self-explanatory. And if you only have, you've got Hopkins now, right, you'll put down when you anticipate one of these places. Did you receive a degree? No, not yet, but when's it going to be awarded? Estimate. And then here's your college, and maybe that's it, right? Because you don't have to do high school. We'll skip down. Employment activities. This is probably the first place where folks can get themselves into trouble, particularly, and I'm going to be conscious of time, so I'm going to go a little bit faster than I might normally. But the key thing about this, first, it's a confusing question. You have to figure out which of these statuses you are. And unemployment counts. So if you didn't find a summer job, that counts to put down. And you put your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your parent as the reference or verifier for that, whatever it might be. Or self-employment. So like I have my own law firm. I'm technically self-employed. That's what I would put down. Or whether you were active duty, guard, etc., state government, federal contractor, other federal employment. And this is all self-explanatory, easy stuff. Supervisor. Look, if you don't get along or didn't get along with your supervisor, put a different supervisor's name. And, if you had a higher level supervisor. What gets people into trouble most in this section is when you scroll down and it asks why you left the job. Now, maybe you left to go back to school. Maybe you left because the internship ended. And nonprofit or unpaid volunteer internships or jobs counts for employment. But maybe if, as many of us were in college, got into a fight with someone in some part-time job and you walked out and you said, I quit. And they're like, you're fired. And then you're like, I said I quit first. Well, and you put down that, I quit because I didn't like it. The government's going to go and check. And if that company's records say you were fired, not eligible for reemployment, that's going to be a problem. The government rarely cares what happened between you and a former employer, as long as it's not something that goes to trustworthiness or judgment. You fell asleep at work. Government doesn't care. You showed up late for work. Government doesn't care. You didn't get along with your supervisor. Government assuredly doesn't care. Might care for suitability for hiring purposes, not for security clearance purposes. So you need to be very careful about fired, quit before or after being told you would be fired, left by mutual agreement following charges or allegations of misconduct. What is misconduct? Not defined. One of the problems with the form. Notice of unsatisfactory performance. What does that mean? It's what we would normally think it would mean. So this is the type of place where mitigation comes into importance. So there's not that much room where you could put into this. You can do supplemental pages and you just list at the top SF-86, your name, the date, your social, and which section number it applies to, and you provide more details about this. You can absolutely, when you guys are ready, reach out to me. I'll give you my email address at the end to help you with any of the forms to make sure that you're providing what would optimize your chances. And then here, more reasons: warned, reprimanded, suspended, or disciplined. Lots of people have trouble. Was I reprimanded? Was I not? Is being told, hey, Sean, you really need to do better getting to work on time. Is that a reprimand? Is that a warning? Maybe, maybe not. Something to have to deal with. And as I scroll down, see, these are all, for most of you, this is just going to be stuff you skip because you probably haven't been around long enough to have all of this. Or maybe you've just had one job for many years, so there's nothing else to list. But that's, again, why this form is so long. And then here, other than what's listed above, last 7 years, the same questions about, trying to ascertain something negative to see if that's something the government wants to consider. For the men on this, selective service record. Even for those of you who are naturalized U.S. citizens, you are required to file or register for selective service. Thankfully, it is easier now to find your selective service number because you just go to this website, put in your social, and boom, here's your number. But you need to do that. I've had to represent people over the years who failed to do this, and that is an issue. So please do it. Once you turn 18, you're supposed to do it within a few months or so. And I don't know how they notify you guys nowadays. I think we got a postcard back in the day. If you've never been in the military, you just skip on down. If you've been in the military, all sorts of questions to ask, right? What was the discharge that you might have received? Have you been ever disciplined, court-martialed, Article 15, Article 32, things like that. Very similar to the criminal section that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. Have you ever served in a foreign military? I've had that with clients. Again, will depend on how long ago, what military. For example, I know lots of people who have served and volunteered as Americans in the Israeli Defense Forces. Even those, I have gotten people their security clearances. as well. Okay, get it. So no longer called JPass. It is called, that's the old system. It's now called DISS, DISS. That is the, I forget, Defense Information Security System, something like that. The DCSA, that's the system that the Defense Department coordinates and controls for your collateral access, your secret, your secret and top secret. Scattered Castles is the SCI system. That's controlled by the Director of National Intelligence. You can always put in a Privacy Act request for your reports to see the dates that you were investigated, which is actually very useful. So if you've ever had a clearance before, it actually would be useful to get that information. Again, you can contact me separately and I can walk you through how to do it very easily. Section 16, at least three references. And again, this is where, in bold, don't list anyone else listed on the form. So if your roommate's your best friend, don't put them down as the verifier for Section 10. You need to list someone else. If you got high with your roommate or person you're going to list as a reference all the time in college, maybe you don't want to list them as a reference. When the government interviews, and they will interview your references for sure, these are the people you want to put out there who are going to speak the best about you, of course. And it is always better, if you can, to list someone who has a security clearance or once had a clearance. Is it required? No, of course not. But it would be helpful for that, because that person will know what this process is and they'll know what's important. When the investigator talks to them, they have a very set list of questions. They're going to ask about your drinking and your drug use, and have you done anything that someone should be suspicious of you? And they just go down the litany of the questions. So again, the worst thing that could happen is, you got high, and it might have been legal in the jurisdiction you were in, but not under federal law. Keep that in mind. I'll talk about it more. And you guys get the dates wrong, or the numbers, the frequency wrong. I've had clients whose friends said that they visited the wrong country. They said they went to Bahrain instead of the Bahamas. Big difference between the two countries, and created all sorts of a mess of trying to have to explain to the CIA why. So when do you fill out these? So clearances do expire. Now, there's no such thing as a permanent security clearance. They will be renewed. You may get an interim. If you fill out this form and there's no concerns that the government actively sees, you may get an interim clearance. That is just as good as a full, normal, regular clearance. Gets you the same access. It's just temporary until a full adjudication is conducted. Now, if that is conducted and you have your full clearance, is really the best term for it, after a period of years, the higher level the clearance, the more shorter period of time, or the shorter period of time where you'll need to go for a renewed investigation. Nowadays, there's what's called continuous evaluation, or CE, means essentially AI is doing all sorts of computer searches, mostly for either to see if there's arrest records or to check your credit reports to see if something comes up. But that is information that you're going to have to be concerned about to make sure everybody's consistent with these. And as it says, I think they want you to know somebody for 7 years. Your marital status, whatever it might be, to put down, including if you're divorced. I'm divorced, so my ex gets questioned every time that I get my security clearance renewed. And they understand that most divorces might be antagonistic. So do not be concerned if you're concerned what your ex-spouse might say. The government, because most of them are divorced too, will take that into account. Section 18. All right, so actually before 18. All right. If you live with someone boyfriend, girlfriend, not a roommate or a domestic partner, that is also someone you have to list on the form. But roommates do not go into this section. It's only someone who you're basically romantically involved with, whether it's legal in the sense of marriage or not. And if what their citizenship obviously is a factor that will be considered by the US government. Okay, section 18 is about relatives. It is a short list, and this is even if they are deceased, right? There are no grandparents, there are no cousins, there are no aunts and uncles. This is what the immediate family, as recognized in this section, is listed. And hey, it can change. So I said I was married. I used to have in-laws. I got divorced. I don't have in-laws any longer. So there could be something on the form with respect to that, which changes. Or actually, my dad got remarried, but first only in a religious ceremony. That doesn't count as a matter of law. So I didn't list my stepmother or stepbrother. But when they got married under the eyes of the state, boom, all of a sudden I had a stepmother and a stepbrother. So again, facts matter. All right, skipping down. Section 19 is another section that often creates problems for people, especially since we're in, since you guys are going to a school in DC, even though I know not everybody is in DC, because it is for, like, they really think you have a lot of relatives here, right? Because it is foreign national contacts. You know what? Hang on. I'm going off to the side here. Where is my thing here? Don't see it. All right. Keep going down. Come on. There we go. All right. We have at least a definition. Any person who is not a citizen or national of the US. That is a specific legal definition. That basically means if you know someone who is a dual US national with another country, they are not a foreign national. They do not go in section 19. Other agencies may ask you, especially in the intel community, for dual nationals, but this section does not. This is a definition under the Immigration Nationality Act. It basically applies and includes people who are like from Guam or Micronesia. But if you are, if the person's a green card holder, they are a foreign national. If they are on some visa, foreign national. Now, other than that, no definitions. Now here, this is very important. Do you have you had close or continuing contact? What does that mean? Nobody knows. Not defined. Most importantly, and or. It is not close and continuing contact. I see this error made all the time by some of the most senior people in the US government. And or. The best way I can describe it, let me just use a context that comes up often. You're traveling overseas, you have a one-night stand. Presumably that was close, might not be continuing. If agencies look at this differently, some agencies require you to list that, some do not. If you have no expectation of seeing the person again, not a continuing contact. If you want to see them again and you're asking them out, potential continuing contact. So facts again matter. In bold, last 7 years. That means if you dated a foreign national and you broke up with them 6 years and 5 months ago, they cheated on you, you hate their guts, you told them, I hope you disappear, I never want to see you again, and you have no indication or expectation ever seeing them again, they're still going on the form because it's the last 7 years. It's not contact recent, it's within that sphere. You or your spouse or legally recognized partner or cohabitant. So this is not just you, the form filler outer. It is this other person as well. So that's key. So you're going to have a conversation with them also. Are bound by affection, not defined, influence, not defined, common interests, not defined, and or obligation. So what do these mean? Best we can do is apply the normal definitions when we were. This can apply to foreign relatives. You have a cousin who lives in whatever country who you're really close to. You have affection for them. That's where they go. You had a professor in a study abroad program. That's an influence of you. You play a video game. I had to do this. A video game with foreign nationals online, and you interact with those foreign nationals. That's a common interest. You're in school with someone right now. Now, that's a tough one. You guys do your classes virtually. Are you connected to them? Well, maybe you go into breakout rooms where you do interact. You're talking to them on your chat boards, on the message board, whatever it's called, Canvas or whatever it was called from when I did it. I forget which one it is nowadays. Factually dependent. I always will tell people an obligation. Let's say you owe somebody money. That's an easy one, right? If you are on LinkedIn with a foreign national, that's not enough as far as I'm concerned. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, whatever of social medias, contact or connection alone, not enough. But if you interact with them, direct messenger, if you do more than wish them happy birthday because the system reminded you it's their birthday, then yes, you should report them. All right. The key thing is don't ask the foreign national for the information in this section. Don't ask them for their address. Don't ask them for their date of birth. If you don't know it, I don't know. That's why those are there. Now, if you can find it out, because maybe it's your relatives and your parents will know, you can ask your parents. Maybe their Facebook page says the information about where they were born or where they live. That's fine. Be careful about LinkedIn, because unless you have a professional subscription, the foreign national or anybody will see you access their page, which may prompt them to contact you and say, hey, how you doing? I saw you access my page. And then you've got to add a new indication of when you last spoke to them. No, dual U.S. citizens are not foreign nationals for this section on the form. Not at all. But again, you might be required by an agency to list dual nationals, but not on this form unless you are told to. Now, this is also where a lot of mitigation can come in, where you want to say, they have never asked me any suspicious questions. They don't know I'm applying for a security clearance. I'm willing to sever contact with them if asked by the U.S. government. Sometimes they do ask. I have seen that happen. And again, because I want to stay somewhat close to the 8 o'clock, we'll go a little bit over. I want to be able to go through everything. Section 20 is all also about foreign activities, involvement, travel, etc. Some of these may be a no, an easy no. Like if you've, for example, you've never, or again, your spouse, you don't have anything property overseas. I happened to go a semester in London when I was in college 35 years ago. I had a bank account. I closed the bank account when I left London in May of 1988, April 1988. I have to still say yes, because this question is ever. So just keep that in mind. All right, we'll go down. Ever had any foreign financial interests someone controlled on your behalf? Having foreign stocks in a mutual fund doesn't count. That's not what they're looking at. They're like, is there foreign property in your name and maybe your parents are controlling it because you were a minor when they bought it or something like that. And again, it's just going to having all the details. What mitigates foreign property? Offering to sell it, perhaps. It might not be worth much. Or showing you have more property in the United States that you don't care if the other country takes your property, because the concern would be that they would threaten to take your property unless you revealed classified information. So I have had clients who owned millions of dollars of foreign property, but they were so wealthy, they had millions of dollars here in the United States, and they're like, I don't care if you take it, go right ahead. Living at home with my parents, if I am living at home with my parents or in contact with foreign if it fits the definition of the form, oh, I mean, but not who they're talking to. I mean, so, all right, this is where the only aspect for this, if I'm understanding Ishan's question correct, if they are talking to foreign government officials, different answer. I'll get to that in a minute. But if your parents are connected to just foreign nationals, no. It's only you being connected to the foreign national. Or again, these would not be, I do not think your parent, I've never seen parents as cohabitants. It's a good question. I'm going to say the answer is probably no, because that would have come up in 30 plus years. They're looking more for the romantic situation, not your parents. But as I said, we'll get down to a situation in a second. Here, I love this. Do you plan to purchase real estate in a foreign country? Yeah, I would like to own Greenland one day. So I will check yes. No, of course, no. I mean, I suppose if you put down a down payment on something and you haven't bought it yet, you say yes. But this is one of those questions where like, no, I have no foreign property, and no, I'm not going to buy any foreign property. Scrolling that. All right. Are you eligible to receive any benefits? Now, again, this for most of us, no, not going to be an issue. But if you are a dual national, you may have benefits that you're receiving from other countries, or potentially, or maybe your family owns property that you may derive a benefit from, or because of their citizenship, you may derive a benefit from. So that's where this section comes into play. Provided financial support for a foreign national. Hey, lots of people have sponsored, helped out their boyfriend, girlfriend, or you're helping out your family who lives overseas and you're sending X amount of dollars every month. That would be reportable. Mitigation might be, I will stop doing that if requested. It will depend on the situation, obviously. Lots of people can provide money to their family overseas, and it's not an issue. It will obviously depend on the country that's involved. I will say, if any of you have children and you have an au pair or a nanny, that may qualify for this section. It depends on the fact pattern. When I had au pairs, we used American companies that hired the au pairs, and they coordinated everything with the State Department. So technically, my financial support was paying to the company, who would then pay the foreign national. So that wouldn't be listed here. But I was in contact with that foreign national every day. So they were in my Section 19 list for that 7 period of time. Is there a difference between a gift and financial support? Not really, not for the purposes of what the government, that would be more of what I'm talking about with lawyerizing the form. So like if you said, well, I give my parents $500 a month as a gift because I don't expect them to pay it back, that would still be constituting providing financial support to them. Have you provided advice or support to someone who's a foreign business, a foreign organization, that's not a foreign employer? For many of you, probably the answer is no, but it could definitely come up. I'm going to skip through these more quickly so we can get to some of the more important ones. Excuse me, have you been offered a job from overseas? That could be an issue. And as a 20B, have you gone to any conferences as students? Maybe you did. So you would list that. And then 20B6, this is the one I was talking about before. This has a definition: immediate family, parents, includes siblings and children. This is, have you had contact with a foreign government besides routine visa going back or consular activity, any type of other. If you go to an embassy party here in Washington, D.C., boom, you may have to report those people. These are not, doesn't require any close and or continuing contact. This has had any contact whatsoever. And probably a lot of this, you might be an estimate, and it talks about what the purpose of the contact, do you have any plans for future contact, etc. All right, let's scroll down. Have you held political office? Have you voted? So I would always tell you don't. If you have that choice, I mean, if it's like, oh, the first election in your country in decades, yeah, look, I get it. But if you want to have a clearance, you're better off not doing it. Travel. You just have to list everything and just make sure you remember it. And it's pretty obvious. As long as you had no problems when you were there, it's not going to be a real issue. Hey, if you went to Syria, questions are going to be asked. If you went to North Korea, Cuba, those are going to be questions. All right. Section 21, psychological and emotional health. This has a very lengthy instruction because the government wants you to reveal things. Do not hold back. Especially if you had like PTSD from the military, this will not be used against you to revoke or deny, as it says here, simply because you have this. It will depend on the facts. Most of this is, have you been ordered to do something? But some of it might be, have you voluntarily admitted yourself for treatment, things like that. Again, ever ordered. Look, I have had clients with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. As long as you're being treated and you have a good prognosis, you can still get a clearance potentially. OCD, not an issue. ADD, ADHD, not issues, including taking the medication for it. It's not an issue. Hospitalized, lots of people have been at different times. Again, you're just making sure you reveal the information. The diagnosis, the government will not ask for your medical records. There is a waiver form at the end of this document that will be presented to your doctors that asks for the diagnosis and the prognosis. But you will not have to turn over your medical records. Now, if you're denied or have your clearance revoked, you might have to reveal your medical records because that's when you're going to be debating with the government whether or not your condition should result in a adverse decision or not. All right. Section 22 is with arrests. Your police record. If you had a record and it was expunged, it still has to be listed, no matter whether or not the judge or your prior lawyer said you never have to list it. There are only very narrow exceptions, which I have never seen, that come up for not listing expungements. They factually happened. So the government wants to know. It's really easy to get your first DUI expunged, almost like routine. If you have multiple DUIs later, that's why the government wants to know that first DUI. Depression and suicidality, if I said that right, suicidality. Okay, I'm not even going to try and say it. Suicidal tendencies, suicide attempts certainly could come up as part of an issue, but it is going to be, what's your prognosis now? How are you dealing with it? You're going to counseling every week. You're on medication. As long as you stay on that, you have no issues, then generally the government will not have an issue. Here, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years, what this is, always to make sure that you are providing the details. And again, this is a section where you really can provide mitigating information, most likely on a supplemental page, so you can go into what the information was about. Why were you arrested? What steps did you take in the aftermath? What were the explanations? What did you do to make sure that at the time you upheld all of the conditions of your probation, things like that. But there are questions in this section. Some of those 7 years. Look, if the 7 years has expired, you don't have to list it unless it's in this section. Have you ever been convicted of a crime, essentially a felony, anything exceeding 1 year? Doesn't mean that you serve time. A lot of times people get convicted of a felony and they serve 1 day in jail. The rest of it is told you don't have to do it if you meet your terms of probation. But this has to be, have you ever been charged with a felony? Have you ever been charged with an offense involving firearms or explosives or alcohol or drugs? So any DUI offense, no matter how long ago, no matter how expunged it would be, it might not even be in the system any longer, that the court has records in California, wherever. You still have to put that information down. Any protective orders, restraining orders against you. This is criminal, not civil. So if a restraining order was a no contact order was or no trespassing order was assessed against you, if it's civil, it does not get listed in this section. Section 23, another section that will come up very often for all you guys. Marijuana use is illegal under federal law. Don't care where you live. Don't care what country you were in. In the US government, it is illegal and you will have to list it. Do agencies care? Not so much anymore for marijuana. Most agencies, as long as you used it at least 90 days, for example, the CIA uses that. I like to see a year would be better. So look, if you know you want to apply for a cleared position, just stop using anything that is even lawful. I mean, you can use mushrooms in the District of Columbia now lawfully under local law. Don't. Just don't, so you don't deal with this. This also deals with prescription medication. And let's say if you have used, you say, hey, it was experimental youthful use. I have no intention of using it again. All that good stuff. And that's all language that I can always help you to create. Did you buy or sell? That's what you list as well. Most people, you're like, oh, maybe you chipped in $10, whatever. You just list that. That's fine. Have you ever used while having a clearance? That's more of a problem. That's really starts to become an issue. So if you ever have had a clearance, you really need to stay away from any type of federally unlawful drug or in a position as a cop, prosecutor, courtroom official, things like that. Public safety official. I was an EMT, emergency medical technician. That would apply there as well. Misuse prescription drugs, also really important. Happens a lot, right? You're in college, you took your roommate's ADD medication to help you study. That's against the law. Your grandmother gave you one of her sleeping pills. I've seen it happen. That's against the law. So again, if you're not doing it all the time, you just happen to do it once, twice, a few times, government's probably not going to care as long as you're saying, look, I'm not going to do it again. This is why I did it. I did it when I was X age. I now know better. Fine. Not going to be a problem. Have you had to go to counseling? Things like that. Section 24 is alcohol. It is very similar to the drug use question. And it is asking, have you been ordered to go to counseling? Have you been ordered for treatment? Have you been ordered or hospitalized? Here is one part, though, a negative impact on your work performance. You ever come to work drunk? Problem. How about your personal relationship? Your boyfriend, girlfriend, or a parent say that, I'm worried about your alcohol use, could be reportable. Something to discuss if it never went beyond that and you never had to go anywhere as a result, like ever ordered, advised, asked to seek counseling. Someone suggested you go seek counseling. Treatment could be reportable, even though you never did, and maybe you're fine. Lots of people who get pinched for a drug or alcohol issue, right? Don't have drug or alcohol problems. It was just recreational use and just happened to be, a bad place, wrong time. Section 25 is if you've ever had a clearance before, this is what you'll fill out. You hopefully will know what clearance level. You might not know. You might not know if it was issued because you weren't told yet. You might not know the agency because you're working for a contractor. So again, fact dependent. Now, the US government will always check other agencies to know if you had a background investigation. So that's why what you say and what you fill out in these forms is going to be so important. Have you ever had a clearance revoked, denied, suspended, etc.? Debarred from government employment. Again, very fact specific. Financial. I always advise pull your credit report every 6 months to a year. Make sure there's nothing on there that you weren't aware of. The government investigators will drill down on you for the most ridiculous of things. I had on my credit report that I owed Verizon $60 because of a vacation home I owned that I sold and the phone hadn't been turned off in time and they were chasing me for $60 and I'm like, I'm not paying you $60 for this. The government picked up on that because it's on the darn credit report. And I think I ended up paying the $60 just to make it go away. Everybody has debt. It's how you manage the debt. It's how you got into the debt. That's an issue. I have a mortgage. I owe the banks money. Not a problem. You might owe school, very likely, money. Generally not a problem. Sometimes it can be. Are you paying the monthly payments? Make sure that you do. Paying your minimums on your credit card, as that's the whole basis. That's how they make money. So you can have that debt, but the more you rack up that debt and you're maxing out the cards, the more likely from a historic standpoint, the government believes you may become a spy because you have to sell your classified information knowledge for money. Gambling, still an issue. More of an issue nowadays, probably with online gambling legalized, but that's a big issue. Failing to pay taxes. Make sure you're filling out your tax returns and you're paying. Look, if you need an extension, you can do that. That's fine, but make sure you're still paying. It's amazing how many people who have clearances actually don't pay their federal taxes. It's egregious, but it is something that will come up. All right, I will skip down. Section 27 was more of an issue 20 years ago when we first got onto the internet, and it's about information technology. And we saw people downloading music illegally, downloading films illegally. And the government would ask about all of that. And I would have clients who had illegally downloaded $250,000 worth of music and film. Most of us nowadays, it's not an issue. You subscribe to Pandora, whatever other, Apple Music, things like that. But this section will ask about things. Have you hacked someone's system? Did you use someone's email? You broke up with your boyfriend, girlfriend. You knew their password and you went into their account. You'd actually have to reveal that on the form. So don't do it. But most of this would not come up. Non-criminal court actions. Have you been sued? Have you sued? So my divorce comes up, at least in the last, well, my divorce would come up in the other section anyway, but if it was in the last 10 years, it would come up. I do a lot of FOIA, Freedom of Information Act litigation. Sometimes I'm the plaintiff. Boom. I have to put that in this section. And then the final section, ironically, I used to just make fun of this section. It was not an issue until January 6th. Who do you associate with? Do you associate with terrorists? Do you associate with people who tried to overthrow the US government? Now, it meant more in the Biden administration than, frankly, it might mean now in the Trump administration, given the Trump view of January 6th. But at some point in time, we will return back to the way it used to be. And those who tried to break into or did the Capitol and overthrow the US government actually would be part of some of these questions. And some of these questions go into more detail about what level of support or affinity you have. I still laugh at have you ever knowingly engaged in terrorism as if somehow you inadvertently engaged in terrorism, but whatever. Have you ever advocated design activities designed to overthrow the US government by force? Well, fact dependent now. I actually have represented some double agents for Al Qaeda who I have to put down on my form every so often. Were you at the Capitol on January 6th? You might have to actually put down this response here. Most of you guys are going to be all just no, 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 no to all of these. So you're not going to have anything to be concerned about. Supplemental page as we finish this up. But you can just put, you don't need to have this one page. You can just put it into a Word document and as many as you might need, especially if you worked or traveled overseas a lot, you may have tons of foreign national contacts. I've had clients who have had 50, 60, 70, over 100 foreign national contacts. Most of the time they over-report or under-report. Again, that's why talking to an experienced lawyer may make a difference. You will execute a credit report so that the government can pull your tax records. They can pull your credit report, your credit records. And again, that will be ongoing. And here's the health form I mentioned. Does the person have a condition that could impair? So you might have something, maybe you had severe depression. That could impair your judgment, reliability, or trustworthiness. Yes. Okay, the doctor would fill out what the condition was. What's the prognosis? Excellent. This was from years ago. It was because of a tragedy in the family. They have been able to deal with it. I have no concerns whatsoever. You're fine. No problem. Here's the credit report. And there you go, 136 pages of this form. Again, the online version may be a little bit different, but it generally will include the same sort of questions. For anyone who wishes to get a hold of me to have more details, if you have an issue with either filling out the form or you have a denial or a revocation, which hopefully you will not, because hopefully you filled out the form so well, you mitigated any possible disqualifying concerns. Don't hesitate to email me, and I will happily work with you and help you out. I've repped a lot of people from the program over the years since I've been teaching through the school for since 2014, although I'm not teaching any classes at the moment. But I am still loyal to Johns Hopkins, so please don't hesitate to do so. Does anyone do so and contact me? Does anyone have any other questions? Final questions before we bring this to a close? I will wait if you do. I'll tell you what, I will let either Elisa or Michael close it out, and I'll hang around for a minute. So if you're busy typing, we won't log you out yet. Michael, Elisa, I turn it to you.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you to Mark Zaid for talking to us all today. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And then, yeah, if you are interested in joining OSS, please reach out to either me or Dr. Art, and we will get you started.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Mark.
Hey, it is
Everybody
my
for joining
pleasure.
us.
Is CP an issue for med? CP being, before I come up with the wrong one. Anybody know what CP is?
I don't know what he means by that.
Nicholas, tell me what CP is into the chat. John, you can reach out, just email me. Best way to do it. It's right up above, or you just Google my name and my website. Oh, sorry, cerebral palsy. My apologies. No. What I can't fathom why that would be a security clearance. Oh, you're guessing, Sasha. Well, if that's what it is, no, I have no reason to believe why that would ever be an issue for a security clearance. Now, maybe some medications, perhaps, that someone's on could potentially be an issue, but no, I would not be concerned about it whatsoever. Listen, for everybody, good luck with the rest of the semester. For those who are graduating, congrats that you made it to May. And do not hesitate, like I said, to reach out anytime. I turn it back to you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Elisa. Mark,
Good night, everyone.
see you soon. Bye now.